Hello, genealogists. This is Craig again. Today, we're going to talk about my top 12 books. Remember yesterday's session, we talked about the how-tos and what books you should have in your professional library to deal with that how-to section. So I'm going to talk about those books today, and I'll provide you a list of them down in the comments. Please comment on them. If you don't like mine, if you think I should have another one in my list, let me know, because I'm always looking forward to buying another book. This book is not in my top 12, but it's a book that if you're beginning and you want to really go down the road of becoming a genealogist, this is a good beginning point. Of course, it's thick, so it'll take you a while to get through it, but it's well worth having. The Genealogist Guide to American Genealogy is probably the Bible in my mind. It's how I got started, not with this edition. I have a first edition somewhere. I don't reference it very much anymore, but it provided a firm foundation for me to be able to move forward to become what I am genealogically today. So that's the Researcher's Guide to American Genealogy. Now, because I'm an archives kind of guy, National Archives kind of guy, in my top 12 would have to have number 12, the Genealogical Guide to Genealogical Research in the National Archives. In my youth and early years, probably the first 20 years of being a genealogist, I referred to this all the time. I don't refer to it as much now as I used to, but that's because I've had a lot of practice with the records. But if you haven't had practice with the National Archives, haven't had practice with the records there, I highly recommend that you get a copy of this book from the National Archives. So that's my number 12. In your mind, try to figure out what you think my next book is going to be. I also spend a lot of time in colonial handwriting. So Kip Sperry's book on reading early American handwriting was very important to me in the beginning in trying to figure out what things were, like that double F thing that's actually an S or something like that, or a thong, or it's not a thong, it's a thorn. I'm very sorry. Anyway, reading early American handwriting is going to be something you're going to do if you're going to have to deal with records prior to typewriters. My next book is the Map Guide to Census Records. Map Guide to the U.S. Federal Censuses 1790 to 1920 by William Dollarhide. I use this all the time. I may not use it to determine whether a census is available or not. I use it more from the perspective of being able to quickly determine county formation. Like I was just dealing with a problem yesterday with somebody in Overton County, Tennessee, and I was reminded when I pulled out Dollarhide about the Walker line and about how if you're researching Overton, you need to research up in Kentucky also. By the way, there's a Mark Lowe lecture on that somewhere about the Walker line. So if you live in northern Tennessee, close to the Kentucky border, or that's where you're researching, you want to know that. I especially use this for early censuses because those counties get formed pretty quickly. And you always want to know what the essence of county formation is. John Humphrey wrote a book on understanding and using baptismal records. This is one of those books that's mistitled. My sense is that this is the best book for using church records. And it gives you some idea not only about what church records these individual denominations created, but the reasons for their creation. I miss John very much, and I'm sure many of you do also. So I think we're down to number 8. My 8th book is Numbering Genealogy, Numbering Your Genealogy, a very important text, very thin, but a lot of people think it's necessary to create their own numbering system when they create their genealogy. And I'm here to tell you, if you do, you're a fool, in spite of what you think of yourself. There are only two accepted numbering systems for publishing. That's NGSQ and the Register. Anything else outside of an editor requiring you to do something else, because editors are funny that way somehow. But in genealogy, these are the two that count, except for some strange thing that I've never used that you can find about if you read this. So number 7, DNA has a lot to do with what we're doing these days. Blaine Bettinger's and Debbie Parker Wayne's book on genetic in genealogical practice was my second opportunity to learn about DNA. My first was a Heritage Books cruise where we went to Panama, and I took Blaine and Cece and Angie with me, and they spent 21 hours telling me and a bunch of other people all about DNA, and this helped to reinforce what I learned during those sessions. Because of the paper shortage, this one is currently out of print. I hope paper comes back. Those trees have got to grow. Now, because that book is out of print, I've got a substitute book for you, which is not out of print, and that's Blaine's book on the Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetics and Genealogy. And it's an excellent book too. It's now in its 2nd edition. So this can substitute for the Genetic Genealogy and Practice book, but you're probably going to want to get both of them. But they serve, for me, the same purpose. Then number, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6 is professional genealogy. Now, this is the 2nd professional genealogy. This is the preparation, practice, and standards group. I wrote chapter 24 in this one. And I use this often when I have something specific that I'm confused about. And trust me, I do get confused about things often. So this helps me to unconfuse myself in regards to a lot of issues. The table of contents is robust. And it deals with all kinds of things that you as a professional will want to know and will want to use in your business. Now, prior to this version, there was the first version, which was Professional Genealogy Manual for Researchers, Writers, Editors, Lecturers, and Librarians. Some people think this is dated. I don't. I keep it on my 3-foot shelf. All these books are on my 3-foot shelf. And I find it very useful also because it does contain things that the other version doesn't contain. So I recommend both of those, but they're in the same spot. Now, this one goes a little bit farther afield. This is my 5th favorite book, and probably in real life, maybe my 1st, but this is Helen Leary's book on North Carolina research. Now, this book is another book that's mistitled. It really should be titled How to Do Genealogical Research Using North Carolina as an Example. I'm sorry, this is the best book on genealogy in my mind that exists. It's not really a how-to, but it gives you some idea about what might be available in a state, what kinds of records exist, and explains how to use those records. This book is only available from the North Carolina Genealogical Society, and I recommend that you get it from them as quickly as you can. Again, number 5, but in my heart, number 1. Number 4 is Mastering Genealogical Documentation. You just cannot be a genealogist if you don't document anything. And Tom Jones gives us the perfect opportunity to look at how we should be documenting our genealogical reports and those kind of things. So this book is worth the read. I may take the time 4 years from now to go through it chapter by chapter, just like I'm doing the books today. Good book, you should have it. My number 3 book is this book on genealogical standards. you should read this often. You should apply this in your life often. I don't do it enough. I want to do it more. But this book is an absolute necessity for a professional genealogist, especially if you wish to become certified. Number 2 is mastering genealogical proof. If you can't master genealogical proof, you're not going to be a good genealogist. So this probably is number 2 for a very good reason. One of the first things that you're going to have to do after you do one other thing is learn how to deal with the concept of mastering genealogical proof. So an absolute necessity. Unfortunately, it's currently out of print because of the paper shortage. It'll probably be back soon. Can you guess what my number 1 book is? Think about it for just a moment. Write it down on a piece of paper. Okay, you ready? There should not have been any question at all as to whether this should or should not be your first book, Evidence Explained. Now, I will read you what she said. No, I won't, but it was good. I spent a couple of years working with Elizabeth Shown Mills on this book. She says so in the book, in the acknowledgments. This is, in my own mind, one of my favorite things, and I'm lousy at it. And I'm lousy at it because I don't write enough stuff that requires complex citation, because I'm a list guy, pretty much, a tax list, a military list, a muster roll, a finding aid. I'm not a narrative guy. I'm trying to be a narrative guy. But when I truly become a narrative guy, which should be soon, something I've said for years, this is going to be even more well-worn than it is. Now, there are substitutes for this, because this book is expensive and maybe you don't have the money to start out here. There is a smaller version of this known as Evidence. In both of these books, Evidence and Evidence Explained, the most important work in all of genealogy is the first 2 chapters. The chapter on fundamentals of evidence analysis and the chapter on fundamentals of citation. If you can master these 2 chapters, you will be well on the road to becoming a fantastic, awesome genealogist. I say again, the first 2 chapters of this book are the most important part of this book. All of the sample citations that exist in this book, of which there are thousands, mean nothing compared to those first 2 chapters. However, this is not anything more than a guideline. There's a rule that if you have a citation to put together, you can't find it in here. So you have to learn how to create citations. That's what's important. You have to understand what the fundamentals of citation are and what citation is all about. And this book, more than any other book, will help you do that. Now, as I say again, there's a smaller version of this that's pre-internet that is called Evidence, that's also available. And there's a few other things that are also available that if you just want to get your fingers wet, or your toes wet, or whatever you like, that might help you get there less expensively, although I recommend that you get Evidence. But I also find that I use these also as like, I look here first to see if it'll solve my problem before I go to Evidence kind of thing. There is a quick sheet for citing sources that's available. I don't pay attention to it. There is because we do so much in Ancestry, there's a quick sheet on Ancestry and database citations. All of these are prepared by Elizabeth Shown Mills, who prepared the Evidence Explained book. There's citing online historical resources, and those are the things that we work with. There are other quick sheets, and just because I have quick sheets in my hand, one of my favorite quick sheets is the one on the fan principle. If you're dealing with complex problems and you're dealing with brick walls, the fan principle is what you're going to be using, and this is a good step up to start it. These are probably my 3 most favorite quick sheets, even though I've written a quick sheet on the Revolutionary War for years ago. Anyway, so those are my top 12 books. I'm sure that you may have different books for your top 12, but these are my top 12 general reference books that I recommend that every genealogist who wants to do a good job at being a genealogist have in their resources. And I will leave you at that for the day. Thank you very much for being part of Just Genealogy. I'm having fun. I hope you are too. I look forward to your comments.